at the price 1.1291. All right, so long at 112.91.
Bank support has come and is there, but doesn't look like it's going to increase much more.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think the US skews more expensive because, in general, it is a higher quality market, and I think that's definitely true. There's more opportunities, there's more depth, there's more clarity, there's probably a larger market in which to sell. But likewise, it skews because it's over-indexed technology. As we all know, the top 5 stocks now make up something like 25% of the S&P index, an incredible concentration in a few names which trade very expensively. And so, you know, it's a sort of case of saying, well, yes, the tech stocks in the market, these high defensive growth stocks, in my opinion, are very expensive as a group, too expensive as a group. There's obviously ones that will continue to execute as well as they need to justify that multiple, but many of them over the next few years, I believe, will fail to earn the multiple at which they're trading. But in terms of, if you look peel back the onion a little bit, there's a lot of high-quality cyclical stocks which have been on sale this year. And they're the places where we think you can be looking for interest. And as a reminder, I know you said you know the portfolio well, but you know we broadly invest the portfolio so that half the portfolio is defensive and half is cyclically exposed. So we're still exposed to defensive stocks and cyclical stocks through cycle, and our aggregate portfolio trades on 15 times earnings, and we believe we invest in best-in-class businesses too. So I think you can find the value, you just need to look deeper. Sorry, Anna.
And on the cyclical front, banks, you like them in the US, but not so much in Europe. I mean, Commerzbank's up 7% this morning on the back of some change in management there. What will it take for you to be interested in European banks?
Quite a lot of change, I think, would be needed. I mean, the US banks, I think, addressed the issues more centrally far earlier. And I think as a result, you know, for the last 6-7 years, the US banks have really been investing in a huge way. You know, they spend billions, if not tens of billions a year on technology and efficiency programs within their systems and their trading platforms. So that really the only remaining universal banks there are left in America. You know, RBS used to compete with, and Deutsche Bank used to compete on a global scale with JP Morgan, and now they're left trailing so far behind, fixing legacy issues around deposits and their ordinary retail business. And I think, you know, that's the difficulty, that the gains have come from efficiency and technology, which has required, you know, half a decade of investment, which has given the US banks such a lead, that I think that's one of the reasons why they're doing so much better. And if you start thinking, well, I mean, obviously I know that European banks trade well below book value, but the US banks, you know, traded below book value a few months ago as well. And I think Goldman Sachs is a bit of a broker, but still is. They're only trading around book value. And I think for the quality differential, the growth differential, you know, they've all been generating double-digit returns on capital, returns on equity for the last sort of 5 years, whereas I don't think there's one bank in Europe or the UK that's been achieving that. And for me, I think you need a lot more individual business repair to be interested in the UK or European banking system.
Freddie, you have a lot of businesses that seem like they're going to be clear winners due to the COVID crisis. Electronic arts is one. I know I've spent 3 or 4 hours a day playing video games. But you've got others, you know, that'll benefit digitally. Texas Instruments. You've got I think Novo Nordisk is a recent acquisition for you.
That's right.
I wonder about businesses that are going to benefit from the recession. I mean, I see you have Dollar Tree, and I feel like AutoZone could also be a recession play as people do more to repair or Advanced Auto do more to repair than buy new cars. What do you think about that angle?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, in terms of the ones that will do better, I think some of our discount retailers like Dollar Tree, as you pointed out, and AutoZone are very good examples. You know, their comp sales, their comparable sales per sort of square foot, if you like, tend to double in recessionary periods. And it's very clear with the high level of unemployment, you're going to see a lot of trading down. So I think those two stocks are very good examples. And then, you know, some of the ones you just mentioned, EA, Electronic Arts, Novo Nordisk, won't benefit per se from a recession, but they are pretty recession-proof. I know that, you know, there's a big sticker shock on individual games from EA, but in terms of the subscription services and continuing to play, it will probably see a decent level of demand from that. But so we're not betting hugely on a recession, but we feel like we've got quite a lot of ballast in the portfolio that will, act defensively. Unilever we own, Coca-Cola we own, things like this, which will continue to generate decent, even if it's just the mid-single-digit returns through a recession.
Owning Coca-Cola and Novo Nordisk.
Yeah, both sides of the coin.
Exactly. I mean, I'll say no more, but wow.
Freddie, thank you very much for joining us. Freddie Lake, founder and CIO of Latitude Investment Management.
Let's get over right now to Carolyn Hepker with your global news headlines. Carolyn?
Good morning, Matt and Anna. The world has reached a new high for daily coronavirus infections, according to the World Health Organization. India's epidemic has become the third biggest in the world, surpassing Russia. Mexico has now overtaken France to become the fifth deadliest outbreak. And scientists have warned and written an open letter warning of the dangers of the airborne spread of the virus. According to the Guardian newspaper, they say that these dangers are being underplayed by the WHO. Meanwhile, Australia's two most populous states will close their shared border from Tuesday night. This comes as authorities battle to contain Victoria's worst spike in coronavirus cases since the crisis began. From Sydney, Bloomberg's Ed Johnson reports.
The decision taken by the governments of New South Wales and Victoria marks a dramatic escalation of efforts to contain the virus, as Victoria recorded 127 new cases overnight. The state has restricted movement in 12 areas of its capital, Melbourne, and completely locked down 9 tower blocks that are home to 3,000 people, likening them to vertical cruise ships. In Sydney, Ed Johnson, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Here in the UK, the country is ploughing £1.6 billion into theatres, museums and music venues in a bid to rescue the country's arts and culture sector from the brink of collapse. In announcing the move, the Chancellor Rishi Sunak tweeted, "The show must go on." Sunak will outline his next steps for the economy on Wednesday. And beer gardens and pavement cafes will be allowed to reopen in Scotland today as lockdown restrictions are eased, but customers do have to stick to the 2-metre social distancing rule. The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, is urging businesses to do all they can to keep people safe.
I went to a beer garden in Edinburgh to look at the measures that had been put in place to keep customers safe. I was very impressed with that. I was very assured, actually, by what I saw there.
Meanwhile, the Welsh Government has removed all limits on travel. Previously, people had been asked to stay within 5 miles of their home. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Caroline Hepker. This is Bloomberg. Anna, Matt.
Caroline, thanks very much for that. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk about what Europe is doing better than the U.S. in terms of the virus outbreak.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Are you looking for senior care for your mom or dad but don't know where to start? Hi, I'm Joan London with A Place for Mom. Nobody knows your parent or loved one better than you, and nobody knows senior living better than the experts at A Place for Mom. It's a free service, and we've helped thousands of families find the right place for their mom or dad. There's a place for answers, A Place for Mom. Call today.
Call A Place for Mom at 1-800-391-1755. That's 1-800-391-1755.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Tom McKenzie.
Alan Dupont is founder and CEO of geopolitical and financial risk consultancy Cognoscenti Group. How vulnerable is Hong Kong at this point to these potential additional actions from the US?
I think Hong Kong's extremely vulnerable. I think we're at the beginning of the end of the Hong Kong that we've all known. The national security law, which now most of the Trump administration has now had a chance to look at it. You've got legislation going through the United States Congress. Clearly, there are going to be sanctions against Chinese companies that will affect Hong Kong. Financial transactions. Hong Kong is the financial gateway to the world for China, and it's also the entry point for a lot of Western business investment in China. That's going to be a lot more difficult in the future. And US-denominated transactions in Hong Kong are going to be much more difficult. So the US is going to probably put a lot of constraints on what China can do in terms of financial transactions in Hong Kong. That will have a very deleterious effect on Hong Kong's position as a unique business hub for China. It's going to become more like the rest of China over time. It's not going to happen immediately, but you can see where this is going in the medium to longer term.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It is 9:20 in the city. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We're joined by opinion columnist Ferdinando Giuliano, who's making the case that Europe is in better shape than the US as we emerge from the first wave of the coronavirus pandemic. Ferdinando, good to speak to you. So I guess reading your piece this morning, a lot of this comes down to the type of healthcare system that is in place. Do you think the long-term story will be the same as the short-term one we see playing out here?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's a big question. But at the moment, we're seeing two striking differences in two sets of indicators. One is what's happening to the outbreaks in the two areas, with Europe managing to control the epidemic much better than the US, it would seem. And the other one is actually what's happening to the unemployment rate, which in the US was far lower than in Europe. In fact, roughly half, at 3.5% just at the start of the year, and now shot up to over 10%. Whereas in Europe, it's been stable at around 7.5%. Now, the big question, as you say, is whether this is going to be the case for the long run. But in the short run, so far so good for Europe.
One of the other things, Ferdinando, that you don't mention is wearing masks obviously greatly reduces the spread of aerosol when you talk or cough. And at least I know from my experience here in Germany that everyone is required to wear masks in stores, in public places. Many people wear them even walking around on the street. And we also keep a decent amount of distance from one another. That's not the case in the U.S., right? And it seems to be something that that Americans almost politically oppose doing.
Well, I think that's right. There is a cultural element which is very strong, and there is also almost this feeling that the government shouldn't be imposing you something like wearing a mask, even though it's, as you say, crucial for maintaining the outbreak under control. But I also think that the structure of the healthcare system is different in Europe. I think the authorities have a much better grip of controlling public health in a kind of general sense, as opposed to just dealing with someone's illness. I mean, we know hospitals in the U.S. can be by far the best in the world. The doctors are great. But when it comes to controlling the epidemic, you really need to be managing public health, which is different from just dealing with an individual illness.
What do you make of the way that Europe should approach the furlough schemes that are in place? They're different in different parts of Europe, but many parts of Europe are doing something along those lines. How do European governments make sure they're not propping up zombie companies? They're propping up the companies that can get back in their stride as soon as economies get back to quote-unquote normal.
Well, I think that's the big side effect of the structure in place. At the moment, Europe has really frozen its economy, but it's not clear that when it will emerge from this crisis, the productive really capacity will need to be the same. So I think one thing is crucial is to ensure that workers have the ability to retrain in new areas. I mean, I'll give you an example. For example, we know that some area like organizing events or even the hospitality sector will need to change dramatically. And there are lots of people who are employed in this sector. Now, what are they going to do in a year's time? I don't think they, if they assume they're going to be working in the same sector, they're making a mistake. And I think government should really be helping them to retrain so that they can find a profitable opportunity when the furlough schemes will run out.
Is it I mean, you argue that this is an advantage, and I can understand why, for Europe, that most countries have these furlough schemes, these social safety nets in place, whereas in the U.S., these things just don't exist to that extent. And that's a problem for their immediate unemployment. Although in the U.S., I think companies are much faster to rehire employees, right? Because when you hire someone in Germany, that means you have to live with them for the rest of your life. Whereas in the U.S., you can fire them next week. Is there some advantage to the U.S. system in the quickness of change there?
Yeah, and I think there is an advantage in just restructuring, as you were, the economy. I mean, I'll give you another example. These loan schemes, which are guaranteed in Europe, will prop up, some companies which will go back to good profitable business just when demand comes back, and that's what you want, because you don't want good companies to fail just as a result of a 6-month shock, 9-month shock. But there will also be companies which will be there forever, hanging around, and will need more and more money, and the banks will not want them to cut them off, because otherwise, they'll go down with this company. So I think, the big risk for Europe now is over the long term, making sure it doesn't prop up just a zombie economy. And I think, yes, you're right. I mean, the creative disruption which you see in the U.S. has some long-term advantages. What I worry about is that, going from 3.5 to 14% in unemployment in the space of 3-4 months doesn't strike me as the most efficient way to run a labor market, honestly.
What do you expect from the UK in this context, Ferdinando? We are looking at Chancellor's about to make some statements in the middle of this week. Germany, of course, has brought forward a large fiscal stimulus. We haven't heard the full picture in the UK, but what we did hear around infrastructure seemed small and was just pre-announced money that was just retimed. We've heard a bit more on the arts, but what sort of substantial package do we need to see in the UK, do you think?
I mean, I think that the UK is interesting from 2 points of view. One is because it's somehow intermediate between this US model and the European model, which we've described. The second one is because we have a conservative government in place, which is not really acting like a conservative government. And we'll see it again this week. I think the big choice they need to make is whether to continue with these, unemployment support scheme, furlough schemes, or, start to deactivate them and go for a tax cut-led recovery, which I suspect some on the right wing of the Conservative Party will want. My impression is that this is a very different Conservative government from the one we were used to, and the focus will be on more spending from the government. But I'm curious to see how that will go down among traditional Tory voters who are really think that the best thing the government can do is to cut taxes, and I suspect they're not going to get much of that.
That's a great point. We'll definitely be watching that, and of course bringing it to our listeners and viewers as it happens. Ferdinando, thanks so much for joining us. Ferdinando Giuliano there. He is an opinion writer. You can check out this column that he wrote, Why is Europe in Better Shape Than the U.S., and the work of his colleagues by typing OPIN GO on the terminal. This is Bloomberg.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Charlie Pellett. NASCAR fans are cheering the organization's support of the Black Lives Matter movement and the ban on Confederate flags. That's the takeaway from an audience study by Performance Research, a Rhode Island-based firm that specializes in market and sponsorship analysis in the wake of driver Bubba Wallace's decision to call for a ban on the Confederate flag at NASCAR events. UConn women's basketball coach Gino Auriemma is asking for help from Congress to get foreign students, including athletes, back to campus. The Huskies have 3 foreign players on their roster this year. They are from Poland, Croatia, and Canada. The start of the outdoor motocross season is being delayed for a second time due to a spike in coronavirus cases. MX Sports Pro Racing has opted to postpone the start of the outdoor season until August. That series had been scheduled to start July 18th in Indiana. And that's the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report. I'm Charlie Pellett. With COVID-19, so much is unknown.
Is this the worst you've seen?
But we are committed to getting you every piece of information we can as soon as we can.
Tell us about this first big win you have. What is it, 24 million N95 masks?
Fewer unknowns.
Who's winning here? Where is the pressure right now?
That's our goal.
What worries you the most? The time it's going to take for a vaccine?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
What happens next? When a downturn looms, shareholders turn to the C-suite to maintain profitability. And for 2 decades, the leaders of Fortune 500 and Global 2000 companies have turned to GEP for results. GEP's procurement and supply chain solutions help reduce costs, improve performance, and boost EBITDA. GEP helps great companies stay on track and primed for the next phase of the business cycle. GEP, helping the world's best companies do better.
Asset managers who... Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this morning. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town, so come in and see if that 55-inch TV is perfect for the return of sport. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
London. Toolstation are here to help get your job safely started and finished, with over 60 branches within the M25. All open with social distancing and contactless click and collect from 5 minutes. And with 20,000 top trade quality products to choose from. Order online now for collection in London branches and get £5 off when you spend over £30 with the code LON530. So, get your job started at toolstation.com. Terms and conditions apply.
At Simply Be, we've stepped up our sales so that you can step out in style. With up to 80% off summer clothing, you'll find some seriously must-have fashion at prices that are simply too good to miss. So go on, skip those weekend queues and treat yourself to something gorgeous. Shop the sale at simplybe.co.uk.
Listening has always taught us a lot at Honda. And lately, we've been listening to your thumbs. Because thumbs can do everything now. The world is at their thumb tips. So now, the My Honda Plus app lets the thumb take control of your car too. Even when you're not inside the new Honda E, your thumb can find where you parked, set the temperature before you get in, check how much the battery is charged, and schedule charging for when electricity is cheapest. The new Honda E and My Honda Plus app. Oh, a thumbs up. Honda, the power of dreams.
If you have to drive, then it's more important than ever to watch your speed. As London starts to reopen, there are going to be more people on our streets. There'll be more people cycling, more people walking to work or to the shops. If you must drive, avoid the morning and evening peaks when the roads will be busier. We want the streets to be safe for everyone, all the time. So watch your speed. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Nothing phases the Money Calm Bull because his bills are under control with Money Supermarket. Even this. The dentist, not a flicker of anxiety. Fox is making love. This laugh. He's calmer than a banana. So, be like the Money Calm Bull. Get money calm. Money Supermarket. Supermarket.
Then on DAB digital radio. To New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Good morning from the Bloomberg Bureau in Berlin. I'm Matt Miller.
And live in London, I'm Anna Edwards. Welcome to the programme. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. Just got 9:30 here in London, 10:30 if you're in Paris or Berlin, where Matt finds himself. And European equity markets, well, something's got them excited this morning, Matt.
It's a good day for up, basically. We see a real rally here, and I think it was the Asian markets that kind of kicked it off. You were talking earlier about there was a front page story on a state paper. A state financial
Securities
markets
Times.
Exactly, financial markets paper, and retail investors are just a huge part of the Asian market, also in the U.S., less so in Europe, but that doesn't seem to have stopped investors from bidding up European equity indexes. We're looking at gains of about 2% across the board. The FTSE, for example, is up 130 points to 6,287, so a gain of more than 2% there. The CAC Grant up 1.9%, as is the DAX. The IBEX 35 up 2.7%. So big gains here. And if you're prepping for the U.S. Open, first of all, good on you. The early bird gets the worm. But you're looking at some big green arrows on U.S. futures as well. Dow Jones mini futures are up 1.5%. S&P and NASDAQ minis are both up about 1.25% right now. And you can see a sell-off in all of the safe haven assets. So the Bloomberg Dollar Index is downsized right now. The yen is losing ground against the dollar. Investors are selling off U.S. Treasuries, and the yield there getting back up towards 70 basis points. Right now it's 0.6907. In terms of commodities, if you just take a look at your GLCO screen, you can see that oil is gaining just about 0.7% for NYMEX WTI, so up a quarter to 40.93. But Brent crude is up 1.7% or 75 cents to 43.55. Gold actually showing a little bit of a gain here. On a day when people are backing out of safe havens, they're still bidding up gold just a couple of dollars, $4.70 to be exact, to $17.76.68 a troy ounce.
Yeah, they don't want dollars, but they do want a bit of gold. Now, let's talk about what's going on in the UK, Matt. We've gained some insight into how UK Chancellor Rishi Sunak hopes to guide the economy through the next phase of the pandemic. The government has made announcements on funding for job centres, traineeships, and $1.6 billion for the arts sector. That is ahead of a major speech that Sunak is set to give this Wednesday. There's been a lot of leaks around this, of course, as well, and with regards to housing also. We'll get to that. So joining us now is Bloomberg's UK government and Brexit reporter Joe Mays. Joe, good morning to you. So what are the key things to watch out for then from Sunak on Wednesday?
Yeah, so you mentioned potential changes on stamp duty would be a pretty big move. We're hearing that there could be a change to the threshold at which stamp duty is paid, moving it up to £500,000 rather than £125,000 now. I think we can also expect to see measures to help boost job creation. We've seen £111 million expected to triple the number of traineeships nationwide. And obviously this is all coming in the context of the furlough scheme being unwound. So clearly Sunak is under some pressure to show how he will keep supporting the economy, keep up that fiscal stimulus.
Why are the numbers so small? You know, the UK government acts so dramatically as if it's, you know, shooting off a big bazooka to save the economy, and then they come out with these piddly numbers, just a few billion here, a few billion there. You know, why not really spend money?
Yeah, I think your point speaks to the big challenge for this Conservative government, which is a party historically famed for its conservatism on economic matters, kind of prudence in fiscal matters, but facing a global pandemic and a natural disaster and having to reboot the economy. You're right. Why don't they spend more? I think Rishi Sunak is cautious. He recognises that debt to GDP is now over 100%. And I think he thinks that confidence in the economy is what's needed most, and therefore if they can do things that boost that confidence without stretching the government's kind of balance sheet too much, then that'll be the best outcome for them. I think we can see that being their strategy.
And of course, Matt's in Germany, Joe, where the furlough scheme was a much more formalised affair. Even before this pandemic was ever heard of or talked about, there were provisions in place for it, at least in part, and there was some company involvement in funding that. Whereas in the UK, the government suddenly finds itself paying the wage bills of thousands and thousands of employees, which it never thought it was going to have to, I suppose. One key difference across Europe. Another key issue for the government, though, Joe, is securing vaccine supplies. We've reported that GlaxoSmithKline and Sanofi are discussing a £500 million deal to supply the UK government with a potential vaccine. What are the key issues there?
Yes, you're right. That's potentially for 60 million doses of that vaccine. The deal would assume it's successful. Glaxo and Sanofi do come up with that vaccine. But you're right. I mean, this is a global race, essentially, to have a secure supply of vaccines. Every country in the world will be trying to get hold of this precious, scarce resource as and when it does become available. So, yeah, it's all about kind of having that certainty and knowing that there could well be second spikes of this virus, and it will be a matter of real urgency to have access to the right medicines and vaccines. So this is all part of that.
Joe, thanks very much. Thanks for joining us. Joe Mays, Bloomberg's UK government and Brexit reporter.
We didn't talk about the arts package.
No. 1.6 billion, yeah.
I've been thinking about this. So Germany also had, to some extent, a package for the arts, but Britons are so much better at the arts than Germans. I mean, think about, British music is like probably the best music in the world in terms of modern. I'm not talking about Wagner and Beethoven, but
well, you are quite a believer, quite an evangelist for it, aren't you?
Well, I love British music, and then British movies and British, television is highly critically acclaimed. German television is awful.
And I'm a big fan of the theatre, and it breaks my heart to see all those theatres in darkness.
British theatre. I mean, German theatre is almost non-existent, and then in the visual arts, I think the Brits also excel, whereas the Germans not so much. In design, the Brits are way ahead, I think, of Germans. I've just started to wonder about what's wrong with the German arts.
You go do a special report on that, Matt. That sounds useful.
Well, and what's so good about? Why is the UK so good at producing successful
I don't know,
artists?
Well, there are a lot of reasons behind that, depending on which side of the arts you're looking at. But sharing a language with the biggest economy in the world possibly also helps.
Yes. Well, I guess that's true. We're better. Americans are better at commercial success in art, but you make, passionate and intellectual art. In any case, I guess I'm not an art critic, so I'll stop now and I'll hand it over to Caroline Hepker with your global news headlines. Caroline?
Good morning, Matt and Anna. I'll give you one word, Shakespeare. The UK ploughing £1.6 billion, as you mentioned, into theatres, museums and music venues in a bid to rescue the country's arts and culture sector from the brink of collapse. In announcing that move, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, tweeted, "The show must go on." And of course, we'll hear more from Sunak outlining his next steps for the broader UK economy on Wednesday. But when it comes to the broader pandemic around the world, we have reached a new high for daily coronavirus infections. That's according to the World Health Organization. India's epidemic has now become the third biggest in the world, surpassing Russia. Mexico has now overtaken France to become the fifth deadliest outbreak. But scientists have written an open letter warning of the dangers of the airborne spread of the virus. According to the Guardian newspaper, they say that these dangers are being underplayed by the WHO. Meanwhile, Israel is in a state of emergency due to a resurgence of virus outbreak and cases there. Additional steps are needed to stem the spread. That's according to the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. Bloomberg's Alyssa Odenheimer has the details now.
The Cabinet will reconvene within the coming day to decide on new restrictions and will present a plan within the next few days to address the economic challenges the pandemic is posing. The number of coronavirus cases in the country has surged since the government started easing lockdown measures in late April. There are currently close to 30,000 confirmed cases in Israel. In Jerusalem, Elisa Odenheimer, Bloomberg, Daybreak, Europe.
Tokyo Governor Yuriko Koike has scored a landslide victory in an election for a second term. She has promised to prepare for a fresh surge of COVID-19 while still continuing to plan for a delayed and scaled-back Olympics in 2021. From Tokyo, Isabel Reynolds reports.
Koike, the first woman elected to govern the 14 million-strong city, prevailed over 21 challengers on Sunday to win another 4-year term, scoring about 60% of the vote. That's despite keeping her election campaign entirely online to avoid attracting crowds that could spread the virus. In Tokyo, Isabel Reynolds, Bloomberg Daybreak, Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Caroline Hepker. This is Bloomberg Matt.
Caroline, thanks very much. Now, J.P. Morgan Chase analysts predict a sharp rebound for the global economy in the third quarter, according to their mid-year outlook. We'll talk with Global Head of Research, Joyce Chang. This is Bloomberg.
Hope you enjoyed your meal. And I just want to say, he's lucky to have a brother like you.
Lucky? Caring for my brother is far from easy. But he's a part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his. No time for tired. Nothing can disable this love. He needs me, but I'm the lucky one, even though I need help now and then.
If you're caring for a loved one, visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community support for your strength. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
The Boston Symphony Orchestra presents BSO at Home. While you stay inside, enjoy a curated collection of archived concerts and behind-the-scenes stories from BSO musicians. BSO Homeschool provides lessons for music lovers of all ages. New performances and messages from musicians are added regularly. Enjoy these selections and much more at bso.org/at-home.
For the Jewish Communal Fund, Noel Spiegel, former senior partner with Deloitte & Touche and past JCF president, discusses the advantages of a donor-advised fund over a private foundation.
There's a lot involved in having a private foundation. You need to engage attorneys, you need to engage accountants, file tax returns. At JCF, all of that is done for you. You don't have to get involved in anything other than making your contribution to your fund and then determining which grants that you want to make.
A JCF fund may be opened with a minimum $5,000 contribution of cash or appreciated securities and can be used as an alternative to or together with a private foundation.
If you have a foundation, you have to list all of the contributions that you made. Potentially anybody, because the information is public, can find out exactly which organizations a foundation has made charitable contributions to.
Let JCF simplify your philanthropy and protect your privacy. Learn more about JCF's private client group at jcfny.org.
Imagine.
For the friendships, for the fresh air, for the space to grow, for the knowledge, for the sport, for the outdoor education, for the wide horizons, for the academic excellence, for the future. Unleash your child's education at West Buckland School, a co-educational day and boarding school in beautiful North Devon. If you're moving to the southwest for a better quality of life, this is education without compromise in what the Good Schools Guide called a gem of a school in an exceptional location. To see for yourself, find us at westbuckland.com.
When your tenants have a burst pipe and you've got a busy day ahead, superheroes crashing through the wall isn't going to help anyone. With Direct Line Landlord Emergency added to your policy, we're on it to send a rather super plumber in 4 hours before you've tucked into your lunch. We can also assemble locksmiths, glaziers, electricians and drainage engineers. Search Direct Line Landlord Emergency. We're on it. Direct Line. Residential properties. Optional add-on up to $1,500 per caller. Extreme weather conditions may extend response time. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
With the shift to remote working, video conferencing has become the new normal to keep your business running. But is it reliable and secure? Cisco WebEx is committed to the highest security standards and already trusted by both small businesses and many of the world's largest organizations. Call, message and meet securely with Cisco WebEx. Sign up at cisco.uk/work from home. When secure remote work is critical, WebEx is essential.
At Harford's, we're here to get you where you want to be. We fit car tyres for over 500,000 customers every year. We could fit yours at one of over 350 garages, or even on your driveway with our mobile experts, which means you can safely hit the road again and surprise that special someone.
Happy birthday!
From tyre fittings to MOTs, there really is no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
When family video calls are too good to miss. Your virtual quiz team is demanding a rematch. And one more episode just isn't enough. You need loads of data. Get a massive 30 gig for £10 a month from Smarty Mobile. With no speed restrictions, unlimited calls and texts, and a flexible 1-month plan, it's no wonder you Switch awarded Smarty Best Values SIM-Only Network 2020. Search Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. See smarty.co.uk.
Ever wondered how people's postcode lottery works? Easy. Your postcode is your ticket. And every weekday it gives you the chance to win £1,000 or £30,000 every weekend. And every month players in your postcode could win a share of £3 million. Join in at postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 23rd of July to play in the August draws. PPL manage lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus. Conditions apply. Play responsibly.
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80, or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
If you can build that flat-pack wardrobe without looking at the instructions, you've still got it. If you can manage 5 keepy-uppies on your first go, you've without question still got it. If you can toss a pancake to the ceiling and not let it hit the floor, surely you've still got it. And if you can just about fit into those jeans you bought 5 years ago, you've definitely still got it. Brute, still got it.
The breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning from London. I'm Anna Edwards with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. European equity markets very much on the front foot, up by 1.4%. The London market up by more than 2%, as is the IBEX over in Spain. Otherwise, we see really decent gains coming through across Europe, up by more than 1.5% on the CAC in Paris, on the DAX in Frankfurt, and on the FTSE MIB over in Milan. So strength across the board, really. The Asian equity session was also strong. We had real strength, in particular in the Chinese markets, and that spilled into the Hong Kong market and the banking sector in particular. So HSBC was strong there. The Hang Seng up by 3.8%, the Shanghai Composite up by 5.7% by the close. We see an interesting picture on the stock specifics here in the UK. Commerzbank is a big gainer, along with HSBC in the banking sector. A change in management expected there. Lloyds Banking Group also bringing forward some change in management, as is Aviva, and both of those stocks in banking and insurance, both those go higher. Boohoo is an interesting clothing retailer in the UK. That stock down by 9.6%. Interesting questions being asked about corporate governance at that particular business right now. And in connection with what we might hear from the Chancellor in the middle of this week, we see house builders doing really well, up by more than 4.5% on Taylor Wimpey, Barratt Development and Persimmon. All of those move higher on expectations of a change in stamp duty. Elsewhere then, check a few other assets for you. Oil prices are stronger. The dollar is weaker. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Caroline Hepker with more on what's going on around the world.
Thanks, Anna. India now has the third largest number of coronavirus cases in the world. It's gone beyond even Russia's total of about 700,000 cases. Only the US and Brazil have more. India has failed to suppress the virus despite implementing one of the world's most expansive lockdowns at the end of March. Meanwhile, in Europe, officials in Spain and in the Spanish region of Galicia have reimposed lockdown restrictions on an area of 70,000 people following a new coronavirus outbreak. Until Friday, only those travelling for work will be allowed to leave or enter the coastal district of A Marina. Officials are linking the local outbreaks to bars in the area. And finally, the US presidential race may be in for a major shake-up. The music mogul Kanye West is saying that he's coming on board. It's not clear, though, if he's serious, but the social media giant tweeted his intention to challenge President Trump and Joe Biden. Social media exploded after that. Kanye has almost 30 million followers on Twitter and seems to have won the backing of Tesla boss Elon Musk. A Bloomberg review, though, suggests that he has yet to file the relevant forms. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Caroline Hepker. This is Bloomberg Anna. Matt, good morning.
Good morning, Caroline. Yes. So let's get over right now to Nathan Hager. Our colleagues in the U.S. are getting ready for Bloomberg Daybreak on Sirius XM, and let's find out what they've got on this, what looks like a risk-on Monday morning. Nathan?
Doesn't it? We're coming back from a long holiday weekend here, Matt, and as you say, seeing fireworks in equity markets. The solid June jobs report we got last week may be outweighing concerns about the surge in coronavirus cases that more than half the country is seeing now. And the latest sign of optimism about the recovery may be this: Berkshire Hathaway finally getting back in the deal business. We're going to have the details on Warren Buffett's Dominion gas buy. And we'll speak with Michael Hewson of CMC Markets, get his outlook for investments as we head toward second quarter earnings season in just a week or so. We also have Dr. Amesh Adalja of the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health on the program this morning. We'll get more on the coronavirus surge and where we are in the race for a vaccine. Join me and Karen Moscow for all that, much more coming up this morning on Bloomberg Daybreak. Matt.
Did you see any fireworks this weekend?
They actually did shoot off a few in my neighborhood. So
well, you were to safe distance.
Oh, it certainly was, yeah. Yeah.
Good. We worry about you.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, it was interesting because, they shot a whole bunch of fireworks, more than past years, near the Washington Monument on the National Mall. A lot thinner crowds than we've seen in the past. So we're still seeing social distancing, even amid the 4th of July festivities. Yeah. Yeah.
I missed the Boston Pops for the first time in like 4 years.
Oh, that's one of the best shows in the country.
It is awesome. I mean, it was still cool. They did it online, but I'm spoiled. I've gotten so used to being there. It's so cool to be in Boston for the 4th of July. I mean, Washington's pretty cool too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's Boston. That's where it all started.
That's exactly right.
Don't mention the tea.
Sorry, just did.
I'm still here. I'm still listening.
Independence Day, Anna. You don't have the same kind of appreciation for it that way.
No, but we had a super Saturday where all the pubs and bars opened, so that was nice. Apparently,
nice. So you were doing a pub crawl, I'm sure, Anna, all weekend.
Of course.
All right. Well, Nathan's coming up with Karen Moscow if you're listening on Sirius XM. If you're listening on London DAB, we hope you've recovered from Super Saturday, and Bloomberg Surveillance will be next.
Right. JP Morgan analysts predicted global growth would rebound sharply in the third quarter. Their 2020 mid-year outlook, released 2 weeks ago, saw markets continuing their path to healing. And they thought the health risks of a stubborn first wave or potential second wave of coronavirus should be managed. Joining us now is Joyce Chang, Global Head of Research at JP Morgan Chase. And I wonder if any of their thinking has changed or is evolving. Joyce, good to speak to you. So is any of your thinking changing? Are you having evolving thoughts about the U.S. economy the longer this difficulty in getting the virus under control in some southern states continues?
I mean, over the next 3 to 6 month horizon, I think more questions will come up. They'll come up because of the virus and also because some of the income support from these programs fades. But in the next 1 or 2 months, very much what we were looking for is playing out. You're having at least a partial V-shaped recovery with the economic growth numbers. After going down so much in the second quarter in a synchronized downturn, you're also getting the synchronized recovery. And the employment numbers have come out better than we expected. So I think you're going to continue continue to see concerns about the second wave, but you're not going to go back to the kinds of lockdowns that we had a few months ago. But this is something where the question is, will this still last for the remainder of the year? Because you will have, I think, more questions by the fourth quarter of the year. But this is the easier part of the recovery right now. You've got the sharp V down and you've got the V that's coming back up. But what you really need to look at by the end of the year is just where income is and where profit growth is compared to where it was before the crisis.
What do you think about the reduced third quarter expectations that we've heard, not just from Goldman, but from others, because of the fear of cascading bankruptcies that, didn't necessarily happen in the first quarter, but are start going to start hitting hard in Q3?
Well, I mean, we are seeing that, for example, in the U.S. corporate bond market, you've had a 6% default rate in high yield, and we've seen 11% of the high-grade debt that's been downgraded. So those defaults are happening, the bankruptcies are happening. But I think the feeling is there's still more fiscal support that's coming online. There are expectations that a package will pass during the month of July, that you're going to continue to see very accommodative policies. And we've also had record corporate bond issuance at the same time. We're looking at an all-time record $1.6 trillion of corporate bond issuance because it's so easy to issue in the market and the cost is so low. So there are concerns about the bankruptcies and the default rates and the downgrades, which are very real. At the same time, there's a feeling that the accommodation, the ability to still come to the markets, and these programs continue to provide support. The whole question, though, is that these programs were supposed to be temporary, and what happens when they start to roll off? No one has really talked about the exit strategy, but that's probably going to be tested more over the next 3 to 6 months rather than the next 1 to 2 months.
Yeah, the exit strategy, really crucial. And Joyce, as global head of research, I wonder how much you can rely on previous cycles, previous downturns and recessions and recoveries and the patterns that they throw up, and how much you're having to just start from scratch and reimagine what a recovery looks like, because this isn't, this isn't your grandmother or your grandfather's economy.
No, it's no ordinary recession, and it's not going to be an ordinary recovery. And what we've really seen is that we've had to rely more on high-frequency data points. These traditional data metrics that are coming with a lag, and some of looking at the past cycles hasn't helped us that much. So we've been doing things like looking at the credit card data, looking at the mobility data. We've been taking a look at Open Table, Apple driving directions, just to see where activity is ticking up. And I do think you're going to see that, June's going to be a very strong month based on the Chase data. But the question really is, exit strategy 3 to 6 months, and where is potential growth after this? We are still looking at a scenario where you're about 4% below the pre-pandemic GDP at the end of this year. So the GDP growth numbers may look V-shaped when you go down in a synchronized way and come back up in a synchronized way, but that still doesn't tell you what the income and the profit losses will be over the longer term.
All right, very cool to get some time with you, Joyce. Fascinating stuff there. And I'll just tell our London listeners, well, I'll tell all of our listeners, you're going on television next with Bloomberg Surveillance. So if you want to hear more from Joyce Chang, Global Head of Research, JP Morgan Chase, either turn on your TV or if you're in London, just leave it right there. Don't touch that dial, as they used to say, because she'll be coming on London DAB digital radio as well. This is Bloomberg.
When your tenants have a burst pipe and you've got a busy day ahead, superheroes crashing through the wall isn't going to help anyone. With Direct Line Landlord Emergency added to your policy, we're on it to send a rather super plumber in 4 hours before you've tucked into your lunch. We can also assemble locksmiths, glaziers, electricians and drainage engineers. Search Direct Line Landlord Emergency. We're on it. Direct Line. Residential properties. Optional add-on up to $1,500 per caller. Extreme weather conditions may extend response time. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this morning. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town, so come in and see if that 55-inch TV is perfect for the return of sport. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Monday morning by the scruff of the neck. Ignore this gloomy weather and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Monday, July 6, 2020. Coming up this hour.
Global equities surge with stocks in China leading gains.
Warren Buffett is back in the deal business, making a big bet on natural gas.
A surge in coronavirus cases fails to sap sentiment despite the biggest one-day infection count ever.
Phase 3 of reopening starts today in New York City, plus the FDA chief says it's too early to tell if Florida's Republican National Convention will be safe from COVID-19. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. An update on Yankee pitcher Masahiro Tanaka. The Rangers and Islanders playoff games will be in Toronto.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak is brought to you by Witham, a forward-thinking advisory and accounting firm helping clients to be in a position of strength in the new reality of business. Learn about their innovative solutions by visiting witham.com.
And U.S. futures are following stocks in Europe and Asia higher. 5:01 on Wall Street. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 35 points. Dow futures up 336, and Nasdaq futures up 124. The DAX in Germany is up 1.5%. 10-year Treasury down 5/32, yield 0.68%, and the yield on the 2-year 0.15%. NYMEX crude oil up 0.5% or 19 cents at $40.84 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.2%. Or $3.40 at $17.8660 an ounce. The euro 1.1290 against the dollar. The yen 107.57. And this data check brought to you by SEI. Crisis bring out the best in people, character, community, partnership, together as one. SEI. Go to SEIC.com/IMS. Nathan.
Karen, we're coming off the biggest one-day increase in global coronavirus infections, and U.S. cases continue to surge with a pace above last week's average. California, Florida, Arizona, and Texas continue to see increases. Lena Hidalgo is chief executive of Harris County, Texas.
At this point, our hospitals here in Harris County, Houston, and 33 other cities, they are crossing into surge capacities.
Hidalgo is calling for more restrictions to limit the spread of the virus, but says the state government has blocked local officials from taking appropriate measures.
In Arizona, Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego blames the surge on an early push to reopen. She spoke on EBC's This Week, heard right here on Bloomberg Radio.
We opened way too early in Arizona. We were one of the last states to go to stay at home and one of the first to reemerge.
Like officials in Houston, the Phoenix mayor says state government is limiting the ability of local officials to impose restrictions.
We opened way too early in Arizona. We were one of the last states to go to stay at home and one of the first to reemerge.
And the surge could put local tourism at risk in states across the South. TripAdvisor CEO Stephen Kaufer is seeing travelers shun the southern vacations for areas with lower infection rates. He spoke on Face the Nation from CBS, heard Sundays on Bloomberg Radio.
You look at the top searches, and I think 5 or 6 of the top 10 a couple of weeks ago were all wonderful southern beaches, Texas, Arizona, Florida, great places to go, but that switched. Everyone's moving essentially up north, away from all these hotspots
Cases in northern states have seen infections stabilize. Today, New York City enters phase 3 of its reopenings. Phase 3 also begins today in Massachusetts.
Well, despite rising infections, the Trump administration remains bullish on the economy. Labor Secretary Eugene Scalia says the recovery is going better than expected and more stimulus could further boost growth. He appeared on Fox News Sunday, heard on Bloomberg Radio.
There will be talk as we get deeper into the month about possible additional measures, but I am optimistic, as I know the president is, about how we're reopening, the success we're having right now, rebuilding that really extraordinary economy that we had through February until the virus came.
Goldman Sachs, however, doesn't share that sentiment. Economists at the firm are lowering estimates for GDP this quarter. Goldman predicts 25% growth for the third quarter. That's down from 33%.
Coronavirus cases are climbing and GDP forecasts are falling, but stocks are still on the rise. U.S. futures and European equities are gaining after a strong showing in Asia. Bloomberg's Juliet Sally joins us from Singapore with more on the Asian session. Good morning, Juliet.
Good morning, Karen and Nathan. The CSI 300 gained 5.7% on the close, its biggest one-day jump since February last year to hold at June 2015 highs. The Shanghai Composite had its biggest rally in 5 years to hold at February 2018 highs, up by 5.7%. Brokerages led the gains in China, with enthusiasm also sparked by a front-page editorial from the nation's state media that said fostering a healthy bull market after the pandemic is more important to the economy than ever. Hong Kong stocks also joined the rally, set for a bull market, while gains were more muted in Japan and South Korea. In Singapore, Juliet Sali, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, thanks, Juliet. European equities are also gaining. The stock 600 is up 1.25%. U.S. futures are higher by 1.1%. And Warren Buffett is getting back in the deal business. Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway is buying all of Dominion Energy's gas pipeline and storage assets. Here with more on the acquisition is Bloomberg's Catherine Chiglinski.
The deal really underscores just how big Berkshire is going to be in the energy sector after this. These operations are really going to spread kind of their hold in the natural gas transmission side of things. And it really underscores how Buffett is willing to now finally pounce. I mean, he took a really cautious approach at his annual meeting in May, warning people that we probably haven't seen the worst case possibilities with this pandemic. So I think this deal and the size of it really underscores that Buffett is actually willing to put some of that money to work.
Berkshire's buying Dominion's assets for $4 billion. It's also assuming more than $5 billion in debt. As a result of the deal, Dominion and Duke Energy are killing plans for a controversial gas pipeline along the East Coast.
Uber is also making deals. Sources tell us the ride-hailing company has agreed to acquire Postmates for $2.6 billion. The takeover would help Uber gain ground against DoorDash, the market leader in U.S. food delivery. The acquisition could be announced as soon as today.
And we're seeing strong gains for some big names in early trading. Shares of Uber are up 6% after word of that deal. Tesla's higher by 6%. American Airlines, Delta, United, and Boeing are up more than 3%. Norwegian Cruise Lines, Carnival, and Royal Caribbean are higher by at least 4%, and Dominion Energy is up 13% after news of that deal with Berkshire Hathaway. S&P futures are higher by 32 points. Dow futures up 310. NASDAQ futures a gain of 117 points. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg. At 5:07 on Wall Street, Michael Barr is back with more on what's going on around the world. Welcome back, Michael.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Phase 3 of reopening from the pandemic is scheduled to begin today in New York City. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo urged people in a tweet to wear a mask, social distance, and be smart. Cuomo says, though, indoor dining will remain closed. However, some restaurants are getting more creative and are expanding their outdoor dining. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says there should be a national mask requirement during the virus. Murphy spoke on NBC's Meet the Press.
It's become almost not even debatable. Certainly when you're going out and absolutely indoors. As I mentioned, this virus is a lot more lethal inside than outside. But if you're leaving your house, put on a mask. I think it ought to be a national requirement.
Meet the Press can be heard Sundays on Bloomberg. Broadway star Nick Cordero has lost his long battle to COVID-19. The Tony nominee was just 41. FDA Commissioner Stephen Hahn said it's too early to tell if it's safe to host part of the Republican National Convention next month in Florida, where coronavirus cases have been surging. It originally scheduled to be held in Charlotte, North Carolina, But Hahn on CNN's State of the Union also commented on President Trump saying that 99% of coronavirus cases in the U.S. were totally harmless.
I'm not going to get into who's right and who's wrong. What I'm going to say, Dana, is what I've said before, which is that it's a serious problem that we have. We've seen this surge in cases. We must do something to stem the tide, and we have this in our power to do it by following the guidance from the White House Task Force and the CDC.
Critics say the president's comments were misleading. India's coronavirus epidemic became the third biggest in the world behind the U.S. and Brazil. Infections continue to spread elsewhere as the Philippines added the most cases. Prosecutors have told a judge they'd like to schedule a Friday court appearance for Jeffrey Epstein's associate on charges she helped him recruit women to sexually abuse. British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested Thursday. She has been detained without bail after agreeing to be moved to New York. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mike LeVar. This is Bloomberg. Nathan?
Thank you, Michael. It is 5:09 on Wall Street. Time now for the Burton Accountants and Advisors Sports Report. Here's John Stashower.
All right, Nathan, the Yankees were holding their collective breaths on Saturday when Masahiro Tanaka took that Giancarlo Stanton line drive off his head. But good news yesterday from manager Aaron Boone.
He had concussion-like symptoms originally before leaving for the hospital that have since dissipated. He went through a battery of tests at the hospital. Everything checked out well. They had a CT scan. It's negative.
Tanaka, after being released from New York Presbyterian Hospital, even showed up yesterday at the stadium and was said to be in good spirits. But James Paxton and Jordan Montgomery both used the L-shaped fence in front of them when they pitched after Tanaka. Yanks will have an intra-squad game today with Jay Happ on the mound. David Price, now a Dodger after his trade from Boston. He's the biggest name player to choose not to play when MLB starts its shortened season. A few weeks, Price walking away from almost $12 million in a 60-game season. He would have made only about 12 starts. Cleveland manager Terry Francona says it is time for a name change. They have been the Indians since 1915. The Washington Redskins appear about to change their name. Their new coach, Ron Rivera, said to be talking to team owner Dan Snyder about possible new names. The Atlanta Braves say they have no plans to change. The Rangers and Islanders now finally know where they are headed for the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Eastern Conference games will be in Toronto. The West games in Edmonton. 26-year-old American Bryson DeChambeau just put on 40 pounds, saw it pay off with an impressive PGA win at the Rocket Mortgage in Detroit. Long-hitting DeChambeau shot 23 under par and won by 3 shots. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
All right, John, thanks. Now our weekly look at what would have been in sports if not for the pandemic. The Subway Series leads the way. The Mets and Yankees would have played each other tomorrow for the first time this season in the Bronx. Other rivalry games would have included Cubs White Sox, A's Giants, and Dodgers Angels. After the traditional middle Sunday off, Wimbledon would have resumed today with all 16 men's and women's singles matches in the 4th round. The next major tournament is the U.S. Open on August 31st. This is Bloomberg.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet The most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is... Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this morning. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town. So come in and see if that washing machine can handle all that laundry. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Monday morning by the scruff of the neck. Ignore this gloomy weather and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. We can replace your battery at over 700 stores and garages, or even at your home or work with our mobile experts, so you can enjoy an engine that starts first time, every time, and start enjoying the open road again.
Are we nearly there yet?
From battery replacements to tyre fittings to MOTs, there really is no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80, or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
Here's Tom McKenzie.
Alan Dupont is founder and CEO of geopolitical and financial risk consultancy Cognoscenti Group. How vulnerable is Hong Kong at this point to these potential additional actions from the US?
I think Hong Kong's extremely vulnerable. I think we're at the beginning of the end of the Hong Kong that we've all known. The national security law, which now most of the Trump administration now had a chance to look at it. You've got legislation going through the United States Congress. Clearly there are going to be sanctions against Chinese companies that will affect Hong Kong. Financial transactions, Hong Kong is the financial gateway to the world for China, and it's also the entry point for a lot of Western business investment in China. That's going to be a lot more difficult in the future, and US-denominated transactions in Hong Kong are going to be much more difficult. So the US is going to probably put a lot of constraints on what China can do in terms of financial transactions in Hong Kong. That will have a very deleterious effect on Hong Kong's position as a unique business hub for China. It's going to become more like the rest of China over time. It's not going to happen immediately, but you can see where this is going in the medium to longer term.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Global stock markets are starting the week higher after China's influential state media stoked bullish enthusiasm. The dollar is falling for a 5th day, and treasuries are dipping. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 31 points, Dow futures up 307, NASDAQ futures up 118, the DAX in Germany's up 1.3%. 10-year treasury down 4/32 yield 0.68%, the yield on the 2-year 0.15%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1/3% or 14 cents at $40.80 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.2% or $3.70 at $17.8630 an ounce. The euro at 1.1284 against the dollar. The yen at 107.56. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. We are coming off the biggest one-day increase in global coronavirus infections. U.S. cases continue to surge, the pace above last week's average. California, Florida, Arizona, and Texas continue to see increases. India's coronavirus epidemic became the third biggest in the world, surpassing Russia. FDA Commissioner Stephen Hahn said it is too early to tell if it's safe to host part of the Republican National Convention next month in Florida, where coronavirus cases have been surging. It was moved from Charlotte, North Carolina, because of virus concerns from the state's Democratic governor. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg has agreed to meet tomorrow with leaders of the NAACP, the Anti-Defamation League, and Color of Change to discuss combating racism and discrimination. They will also talk about voter suppression after Facebook received civil rights complaints. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. It is 5:19 on Wall Street and live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak, and Michael Hewson joins us as we come back from the long holiday weekend, chief market analyst at CMC Markets. Good, as always, to talk with you, Michael. And it seems like this has been the story for some time, hasn't it, that coronavirus cases continue to surge, and so does the equity market. Obviously, we got that news from China, the positive editorial from the Chinese state-run media. Is that what's driving this? Is this something that we could see having a sustainable impact on equity markets?
Yeah, I'd be a little bit cautious about this. I think there's a widespread thought process going on amongst investors that fiscal authorities, ultimately governments, are likely to take a continued proactive response to any continued rising coronavirus cases. Later this week, the Europeans are meeting to discuss the pandemic recovery program. Hopefully they're going to get some sort of agreement by July. Personally, I put the odds of that as being very, very remote. There's also the prospect that we could get another US fiscal stimulus as well, particularly given that we are seeing these rises in coronavirus cases. I think it's probably more or less inevitable that we'll get one before the US presidential election. And ultimately, the economic data is continuing to improve. So you've got two factors, I think, helping drive this equity market higher. Of course, whether or not that's sustainable is a completely different question.
Right. Although I was curious whether you think that the continued improvement that we are seeing in the economic data could lead policymakers to think about putting the brakes on a little bit on further fiscal stimulus.
You could certainly make that argument. Certainly, I think Thursday's payrolls number was positive, but you've also got to remember that payrolls number in particular only covers the first 2 weeks of June. It doesn't cover the last 2 weeks of June. And the potential for an awful lot of this rebound that we've seen in the services sector to suddenly find that they get refurloughed as a result of either a delay to the reopening or a renewed lockdown. And certainly if you look at the Sun Belt of the United States, I think there is certainly a risk that could well happen. So I think before people get too carried away by the improvement in the economic data in the US, let's not forget that 21 million people lost their jobs since February. Only 7 million of those people have actually returned to the workforce.
What's the risk that further fiscal stimulus and continued liquidity on the monetary policy side leads to asset bubbles for this market?
I think we're way beyond that. If you want my honest opinion, and given what Chairman Powell said in his recent comments, I don't think he's really concerned about asset prices. In fact, he actually said that he wasn't convinced. It's not the Fed's job to monitor asset prices. It's the Fed's job to support the economy. So whether or not you're worried about an asset bubble, I think, is neither here nor there. I think certainly as far as US markets are concerned, we're already in one. The big question is whether or not it's sustainable. And at the moment, you don't really want to stand in front of a runaway train. That being said, we still need to take out the previous highs on the S&P 500, as well as the DAX and the Euro Stoxx 50, and we haven't as yet done that. At the moment, we still remain in a fairly choppy range.
What are your expectations as we get closer to the kickoff of earnings season in the next week or so? Does that bring equities closer to sustainable valuations?
I think that's going to be very, very important in the wider scheme of things. Obviously, next week we have the start of US bank earnings season. Given the fact that we've seen the results of the recent stress tests and the dividend caps and what have you, the fact that these US banks set aside $25 billion in worth of provisions for bad debts, for me, it's going to be very, very important what the type of signposting that these US banks given with respect to further provision for bad debts going forward. And I think that will be key in determining whether or not this current rally is sustainable or whether or not we get a snapback.
All right, Michael Hewson, thank you as always for your insights. Really appreciate it. Michael Hewson is Chief Market Analyst at CMC Markets. Definitely risk on this morning as we get set to start the new week here with S&P futures higher by 32 points, a gain of 1%. Dow futures up 315 points, and NASDAQ futures are higher by 118 points. Stock 600 up 1.25%. The 10-year in the U.S. is down 4/32. Yield on a 10-year note 0.68%. 2-year Treasury yield 0.15%. Stay with us. You are listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stock futures point to a higher open after the long holiday weekend. Investors are focused on the prospects for more economic stimulus to help counter the impact of the spreading global pandemic. Just before the holiday weekend, the June employment report came in stronger than forecast, and stocks closed out last week on a positive note, and the NASDAQ will start out today at a new record high. This week's economic reports include updates on job openings, consumer credit, the weekly jobless claims numbers, and the monthly snapshot of wholesale prices, and we'll watch for a handful of earnings this week, including those from Bed Bath & Beyond, Walgreens, and Delta Airlines. Goldman Sachs expects a wider contraction in the economy this year, now looking at GDP to slump 4.6% from 4.2% previously, and that's because third quarter growth is not expected to be as robust as earlier predicted. But economists at Goldman see the U.S. back on track in September after some states imposed fresh restrictions to combat the coronavirus outbreak. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Jenny Liss, Jewish communal leader.
Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this morning. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town, so come in and talk laptops and washing machines or fridges and TVs. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Monday morning by the scruff of the neck. Ignore this gloomy weather and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
London. Toolstation are here to help get your job safely started and finished, with over 60 branches within the M25. All open with social distancing and contactless click and collect from 5 minutes. And with 20,000 top trade quality products to choose from. Order online now for collection in London branches and get £5 off when you spend over £30 with the code LON530. So, get your job started at toolstation.com. Terms and conditions apply.
If you have to drive, then it's more important than ever to watch your speed. As London starts to reopen, there are going to be more people on our streets. There'll be more people cycling, more people walking to work or to the shops. If you must drive, avoid the morning and evening peaks when the roads will be busier. We want the streets to be safe for everyone, all the time. So watch your speed. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
From all of us at Thames Water, thank you for supporting our key workers. As the weather warms up, demand for our water is growing, so we need your help more than ever. From taking shorter showers to turning off your sprinklers, you can make every drop count, inside and outside your home, to keep taps flowing in your community. Just don't forget to keep washing your hands regularly in line with government advice. Be an H2O hero. Find out how at thameswater.co.uk/watersmart.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 5:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. Global stocks are rallying despite the biggest one-day increase in global coronavirus infections. U.S. cases continue to surge in California, Florida, Arizona, and Texas, where Harris County Chief Executive Lena Hidalgo is asking the state for help.
As long as we're doing as little as possible and hoping for the best, we're always going to be chasing this thing. We're always going to be behind, and the virus will always outrun us.
Hidalgo is calling for more restrictions to limit the spread of the virus, but says the state has blocked officials from taking appropriate measures. Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego paints a similar picture. She's asking the federal government for help. She spoke on ABC's This Week, heard on Bloomberg Radio.
We've asked FEMA if they could come and do community-based testing here. We were told they're moving away from that, which feels like they're declaring victory while we're still in crisis mode.
Meantime, the White House is touting the economic recovery. And June jobs report, Labor Secretary Eugene Scalia appeared on Fox News Sunday, also heard on Bloomberg Radio.
We saw really big gains in manufacturing, we saw gains in construction, and we saw gains across really nearly all demographic groups. It was a terrific month. But yes, we have new cases. We have to keep an eye on that. I believe that we can continue to reopen our workplaces safely.
Goldman Sachs, however, is more tepid on the recovery. Over the weekend, economists at the firm lowered estimates for GDP this quarter.
At the same time, we're getting a bullish sign from Warren Buffett, with the billionaire getting back in the deal business. Berkshire Hathaway is purchasing all of Dominion Energy's gas pipeline and storage assets for $4 billion. Berkshire will also assume more than $5 billion of debt. As a result of the deal, Dominion and Duke Energy are killing plans for a controversial gas pipeline along the East Coast.
Uber is also making deals. Sources tell us the company has agreed to acquire Postmates for $2.6 billion. The takeover would help Uber gain ground against DoorDash, the market leader in U.S. food delivery. The acquisition could be announced as soon as today. Now let's get you up to date on how stocks are faring. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day. On Bloomberg, S&P futures up 33 points, Dow futures up 322, NASDAQ futures up 116, the 10-year Treasury down 4/32, the yield 0.68%, and the yield on the 2-year 0.15%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.3% or 14 cents at $40.79 a barrel. The euro 1.1287 against the dollar. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thank you. It is 5:33 on Wall Street. Now let's get more on what's happening around the world. Here's Michael Barr. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. Phase 3 of reopening from the pandemic is scheduled to begin today in New York City. It means nail salons and spas can reopen with precautions. Tennis courts can also reopen. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo urged people in a tweet to wear a mask, social distance, and be smart. Cuomo says, though, indoor dining will remain closed. Beaches are continuing social distancing. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says he'd like to see a national strategy on the coronavirus, including a mask requirement. Murphy on NBC's Meet the Press says the state is already seeing spikes as a result of the long Independence Day weekend.
We cannot afford to go through hell again. We need a national strategy, I think, right now, and masking has got to be at the core of that.
Meet the Press can be heard Sundays on Bloomberg. FDA Commissioner Stephen Hahn said it is too early to tell if it's safe to host part of the Republican National Convention next month in Florida, where coronavirus cases have been surging. It was originally scheduled to be held in Charlotte, North Carolina, but Democratic Governor Roy Cooper had safety concerns for a full-out convention. Hahn was also pressed about President Trump's claim, without evidence, that 99% of coronavirus cases are totally harmless.
Any case we don't want to have in this country. This is a very rapidly moving epidemic, a rapidly moving pandemic, and any death, any case is tragic.
Hahn spoke on ABC's This Week, which can be heard Sundays on Bloomberg Radio. At least 6 people were killed and dozens were hurt in a rash of shootings in New York borough Sunday. 2 NYPD officers also suffered minor injuries in the Bronx and Brooklyn. In Atlanta, armed protesters had taken over an area near the burned-out Wendy's where Rayshard Brooks was killed by a police officer weeks ago, and now an 8-year-old girl is dead. Police say Sequoia Turner was in the car her mom was driving and they tried to pull into a parking lot, but they were stopped by armed individuals. Shots were fired on the car and Turner was shot and killed. Atlanta's Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms.
I want to see the same anger and outrage. I want us to see it on behalf of Sequoia and all the other people and children who are getting shot in our streets.
The child's father told a local TV station, they say Black Lives Matter. You killed your own this time. You killed a child. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts from more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thanks, Michael. Coming up to 5:36 on Wall Street. Time for the Burton Accountants and Advisors Sports Report with John Stashar.
All right, Nathan, the Yankees hit hard by injuries last season and in spring training. And on opening day of their summer camp, Masahiro Tanaka got drilled in the head by a Giancarlo Stanton line drive. But the news on Tanaka is good. A mild concussion, released from the hospital. He made a surprise appearance at the stadium yesterday. Aaron Boone says they dodged a bullet. Meanwhile, Washington Nationals reliever Sean Doolittle questions why they're playing.
We're trying to bring baseball back during a pandemic that's killed 130,000 people. We're way worse off as a country than where we were in March when we shut this thing down. And look at where other developed countries are in their response to this. We haven't done any of the things that other countries have done to bring sports back.
Doolittle is with his team now, but admits he's considered opting out. Rangers and Islanders finally know where they are headed. Toronto, the NHL took a look at the coronavirus situation of the U.S., decided to stick with north of the border. So the Eastern Conference games will be in Toronto, the West in Edmonton. Training camps to officially open in team cities in 1 week. And then July 25th or 6th, it's off to the hub cities with games to be played, Stanley Cup playoff games starting August 1st. The Nets, one of several NBA teams to close their practice facility. They were hit by the virus back in March. And again recently, Wilson Chandler and DeAndre Jordan are not going to play. Spencer Dinwiddie, not sure. He's got the virus. Garrett Temple says he's considered not playing. He admits to nerves as they get ready to go to Orlando on Thursday. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
Thanks, John. It's 5:37 on Wall Street. Time for the Tri-State Business Report with Bloomberg's Ed Corey.
Citigroup is hiring up to 100 coders every week. Financial News reports the bank is pushing ahead with plans to electrify its markets business and investment bank, even as the coronavirus crisis has derailed recruitment. The investment bank's reportedly adding about 2,500 coders this year. New Yorkers who make their way to Long Island's East End haven't left the city's restaurants behind. A number of the city's most popular eateries have opened or are running establishments this season in the East End, according to Dow Jones. Others are doing regular deliveries all the way from Manhattan. New Jersey initial unemployment claims fell by 15% last week, according to the Department of Labor and Workforce Development. But almost 28,000 new unemployment claims were filed, bringing to 1.3 million the number of claims since the start of coronavirus-related shutdowns back in March. That's your Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. I'm Ed Corey.
Thank you, Ed. It's 5:38 on Wall Street. Bloomberg Radio is on the air from San Francisco to New York, London to Hong Kong. Let's check in with our global news team for some of the top stories heard on our 300 affiliate radio stations around the world.
I'm Jeff Bellinger, and on WIOD in Miami, I'm reporting on COVID-19 contributing to a growing food scarcity problem in South Florida.
I'm Courtney Donahoe on KTRH in Houston. As big oil stumbles, Total manages to stay on its feet.
I'm Roger Hearing on Bloomberg DAB Digital Radio in London. We're reporting on a £1.6 billion promise by the Chancellor to support the entertainment and arts recovery after the pandemic.
I'm Gina Cervetti, and for KCBS in San Francisco, I'm talking about Uber agreeing to acquire Postmates in an all-stock takeover.
I'm Ed Corey on WWJ in Detroit. I'm reporting Ford's China Ventures report year-on-year sales growth for the month of June.
Those are some of the stories our 2,700 Bloomberg journalists and analysts are working on this morning around the world. Banks are giving up their stronghold on London offices, and it's not just because of the pandemic. Barclays may ditch its investment bank headquarters there. Credit Suisse is getting rid of 9 floors of office space, and Morgan Stanley's reviewing its entire London footprint capital. Thousands of job cuts expected to follow what is forecast to be the worst recession in 3 centuries. And shares of Overstock.com, which have surged 1,100% from their March low, are up another 10% in early trading. D.A. Davidson's doubled its price target to $66 for the e-commerce company. It's 5:40 on Wall Street, and the latest edition of Bloomberg Business Week is online now. It's the heist issue, including the empty frames that remain the art world's biggest mystery. Terminal customers can receive a complimentary subscription at MAG Go, and listen to Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly right here on Bloomberg Radio, or watch it on YouTube weekdays from 2 to 6 p.m. Wall Street time. Get global business, finance, and tech news on your TV, computer, or mobile device. Just visit youtube.com and search Bloomberg Global News. S&P futures higher by 34 points. Dow futures up 333. NASDAQ futures higher by 120 points. This is Bloomberg.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's BABBEL.com.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, makes innovation happen. NJIT faculty mentored Christoph Camacho when he was a student, helping him co-found a startup and patent a device that uses drone technology for reforestation and to collect valuable data for land management.
I founded Paratrees back in 2016, taking what I learned from my research at NJIT and migrating it to a startup. Our technology is to really enhance land management operations. So we work very closely with land management companies. So we have a drone that performs precision reforestation, and we do storm damage assessment, having access to drones that can collect data so it's much faster. And what is more important, we help them drive management decisions. NJIT has been there every step of the way.
Other place to buy British pound for 124.92 crore. So order placed for British pound against United States dollar for 1.2492.
A co-educational day and boarding school in beautiful North Devon. If you're moving to the southwest for a better quality of life, this is education without compromise, in what the Good Schools Guide called a gem of a school in an exceptional location. To see for yourself, find us at westbuckland.com.
Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this morning. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town. So come in and see if that fridge can hold enough for your hungry household. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
London. Toolstation are here to help get your job safely started and finished, with over 60 branches within the M25. All open with social distancing and contactless click and collect from 5 minutes. And with 20,000 top trade quality products to choose from. Order online now for collection in London branches and get £5 off when you spend over £30 with the code LON530. So, get your job started at toolstation.com. Terms and conditions apply.
When you're facing a problem, like how to make an electric car more efficient, you could sit down and talk it through. But at Honda, we decided to listen to the wind tunnel. With wing mirrors? Or with...
I'm cancelling the order. Why? It moved on, so I need to cancel it. So order for British pound, buy British pound, was cancelled.
Honda. The power of dreams.
And at TikTok on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut have banded together to require visitors from coronavirus hotspots to quarantine for 14 days. On NBC's Meet the Press, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy was asked if there should be a national mask requirement.
It's become almost not even debatable. Certainly when you're going out and absolutely indoors. As I mentioned, this virus is a lot more lethal inside than outside. But if you're leaving your house, put on a mask. I think it ought to be a national requirement.
As many as 8 people are presumed dead after 2 airplanes crashed over Coeur d'Alene Lake in Idaho. The local sheriff's department says witnesses saw 2 planes collide above the water, then crash into the lake near Powderhorn Bay. 2 victims have been recovered but not yet identified. Tropical storm Edouard is moving through the Atlantic Ocean away from the continental United States. The system is the 5th named storm of the season. I'm John Trout.
Pandemic information is coming at you so quickly, it's hard to react, never mind plan.
How bad do you think it's going to get?
How much more cutting do you need to do?
Here's help. Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Futures rising this morning. S&P futures up 36 points. Dow futures up 346 and NASDAQ futures up 123. The DAX in Germany's up 1.7%. 10-year Treasury down 5/30 seconds, yield 0.68%. The yield on the 2-year 0.15%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.4% or 16 cents at $40.81 a barrel. And COMEX gold is down 0.3% or $5.50 at $17.8450 an ounce. The euro 1.1287 against the dollar. The yen 107.58. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, we're coming off the biggest one-day increase in global coronavirus infections. U.S. cases continue to surge with a pace above last week's average. California, Florida, Arizona, and Texas continue to see increases. India's coronavirus epidemic became the third biggest in the world, surpassing Russia. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. It's 5:48 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Let's get more now on the surge we're seeing in coronavirus, particularly in the U.S. Dr. Amish Adalja is with us, professor at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Biggest one-day surge for the global pandemic yet, Dr. Adalja, and the U.S. has been reporting more than 50,000 new cases a day for the last several days. This comes down to more than just wider testing, right?
Exactly. This is not just wider testing. We are doing more testing than we have before. Over maybe 700,000 tests in a day are being done on certain days. But you have to look at the percent positivity of tests. And in places where that is rising, even as tests are rising, that tells you that the spread of the virus is outpacing the rising in our test capacity. So this tells you that the outbreak is accelerating in those areas. So it can't be just blamed on testing. This is something that's really a phenomenon of people spreading this more efficiently than they had in the past.
What do you think is behind that spread? Is it just a lack of social distancing? There has been some reporting that many scientists are growing increasingly concerned that the virus could be airborne at this point.
You have to remember that this virus is going to thrive on any kind of social interaction. And what we're seeing in many states, even states that have relatively less opening versus completely open states in terms of their economy, is that cases are going up. And this is something that has to do with people moving around, interacting with each other, and allowing that virus the opportunity. There has been some reports about airborne transmission, and I think this is kind of becoming more of a technical matter. We know that people transmit this when they're in close contact with each other within 6 feet or so for about 10 to 15 minutes. We're not seeing transmission the way we do with measles, where somebody has it, gets off an elevator, and somebody gets on the elevator half an hour later and gets infected. So we don't think that it's suspended in the air in that same manner, although you'll find some aerobiologists that might show some data showing that you can detect it. But do we epidemiologically think that's a main route of transmission? That's not the case. It's likely close contact required to do it, and we're seeing a lot of close contact all over the country right now.
And in response to that, we're seeing a number of states, particularly the hot spots, beginning to dial back their reopenings somewhat, or at least put them on pause. Is that going to be enough to get a handle on the kind of surge we're seeing?
Hopefully it will be. We know that now because we have enough testing, because we've done some elements of contact tracing in many places, we have a better idea of how this is spreading in terms of what activities are more likely to do it. And that's why you're seeing places like Texas, places like Florida, looking at bars, because that seems to be one route of infection that seems to be prevalent in all of these case contact histories. So that's why you're seeing targeted public health interventions. Generally, targeted public health interventions focused on the epidemiology are much better than blanket types of orders. It was only because there was basically no intelligence about what was going on with this virus. Nobody knew who was infected and who wasn't early on in March and April, why you saw these economic shutdowns and stay-at-home orders. Hopefully that won't be necessary in the future, because we know how damaging that can be, and we want to be targeted and precise. It's just that we always run the risk of driving these things underground, and bars are closed, or people going to people's houses and drinking. So it may take some time to see the full impact of this, but that's the idea, is that we could do these targeted epidemiologically driven interventions in the future.
So you don't see the need then for a nationwide mask mandate or some other sort of blanket intervention?
Well, no, I don't see the need for a blanket shutdown order in a given state or for every business, including, house painters. They're not really contributing to the spread. But when it comes to face coverings, I do think that there is starting to be some data that face shields and in masks in certain contexts are what will prevent people from spreading it. And I think that has to do with the fact that there are people out there clearly that are sick, that have mild symptoms that they're not attributing to the coronavirus. And those individuals may be spreading it or not even noticing their symptoms. And that's one of the issues. The fact that the complicating factor is if all this transmission is occurring in bars, that's not where people are going to wear masks. So we may have to come up with innovative solutions if we're going to attack this problem in bars. And I've seen, for example, in Japan, that they require face shields to be worn and people to drink out of a straw. That may be something that we could think about doing in places where bars are not closed and are still driving the epidemiology. But it's going to take a lot of fine-tuning, and this is going to be the new normal, really attacking these hotspots and the activities that are driving them.
We only have about 30 seconds left here. Where do you see us in the race for an effective therapeutic or vaccine? Do you think it happens by the end of the year?
A vaccine by the end of the year would be very optimistic. It's in the realm of possibility, and we are doing great things with Operation Warp Speed, as well as the Gates Foundation building factories, and we're already in phase 3 clinical trials with some vaccines, and we know that the Chinese military already approved a vaccine for use in its military. So I think we are breaking records, but I don't think you can imagine having enough vaccine for the entire country or even significant amounts by the end of the year. I think we have to be prepared to fight this virus without a vaccine for some period of time. People shouldn't get a false sense of security. Therapeutics, I do think we may have some earlier on. There are some monoclonal antibodies companies like Regeneron and Eli Lilly are developing, and we already have remdesivir. So that I think we may have some more in the therapeutic toolbox before the end of the year. But a vaccine is really the only way we remove this as a threat, and I think that's still some time off.
Thanks for this, Dr. Amish Adalja, professor at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Karen?
Thanks, Nathan. It is 5:54 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Law Report. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
EPA workers are now preparing to return to work next week. The plan to reopen the agency's offices was put off for 1 week. The EPA's biggest union says it has deep concerns about member safety. YouTube is accused of only enforcing the copyrights of large owners such as Hollywood studios and ignoring violations of copyrights held by smaller entities. Pennsylvania's top court ruled that state lawmakers cannot undo Governor Tom Wolf's emergency COVID-19 proclamation through a resolution.
Bloomberg Law, everything you need on one legal research platform. Guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
And now in other legal news, we examine the role emerging for Chief Justice John Roberts. A series of recent opinions shows Roberts as a swing vote, an ideological center of the Supreme Court. For more on his role on the bench, Bloomberg's June Grasso speaks to Harold Krent, a professor at the Chicago Kent College of Law.
He has been the deciding vote in all of the 5-4 votes this term. And he also has the power of being the chief. So beyond the swing vote, has any other Chief Justice in our history had that kind of power?
Given the composition of the court, he has exercised their power much more effectively than his predecessors had. Some people think Chief Justice Hughes, way back when, 75 years ago, during the FDR days, had somewhat similar power in terms of trying to keep the court independent, despite FDR's insistence that they change course. But of course, they finally did buckle under to FDR and did become much more giving or welcoming to the rise of the national government and its agencies. But you have to look that far back. I mean, certainly the numbers speak for themselves. We've never had a period of history, at least in the last probably 50, 75 years, where the Chief Justice has been able to dominate the court's rulings. I think 98% of the cases in the last 2 years or so, he's been in the majority, whether it's 5-4, 6-3, and he's able to have that kind of incredible influence. Is really unique in our history, and we're seeing how it's played out. People say he's an incrementalist, which means he doesn't want to air out too many issues. He's been using the certiorari power to limit the type of controversial cases that go to the court.
If you consider Justices David Souter, Sandra Day O'Connor, and Anthony Kennedy, does how long you're on the court play a role in changing the way you view cases?
My own opinion is Chief Justice Roberts is not changing. Certainly, I think he has been somewhat disgusted with aspects of President Trump's rule, but I think he's fundamentally conservative. We're not going to see that kind of Souter switch or Justice Stevens' switch or even Justice White's switch. But yet again, I think the layer for Chief Justice Roberts is not that he's becoming more moderate, but that he really sees a crisis for the court, and he's in a unique role to do everything he can to try to help the respect and dignity of this august institution.
And Chicago King College of Law professor Harold Krentz speaking with Bloomberg's June Grasso. Catch more of that interview plus analysis of the latest legal news by subscribing to the Bloomberg Law Podcast or downloading the show at Bloomberg.com/podcast. And attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. S&P futures are up 36 points, Dow futures up 349, NASDAQ futures up 121. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues. This is Bloomberg.
Influential.
Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this morning. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town. So come in and talk laptops and washing machines or fridges and TVs. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Monday morning by the scruff of the neck. Ignore this gloomy weather and...
I'm placing a stop on profit for euro at 1.92. 1.12, sorry, 92. Okay, stop on profit on 112.92.
A Tiguan. No, Passat. Oh, I need to sit down.
Here, have a seat.
The big Volkswagen event. With every type of car on offer, you may have trouble choosing. With Solutions Personal Contract Plan until 12th of July, excludes e-Golf at participating retailers only, minimum 46 months.
Moving stop to 1.90, 112.93. I moved stop on profit for Euro USD for 112.93.
Warren Buffett is back in the deal business, making a big bet on natural gas.
A surge in coronavirus cases fails to sap sentiment despite the biggest one-day infection count ever.
Phase 3 of reopening starts today in New York City, plus the FDA chief says it's too early to tell if Florida's Republican National Convention will be safe from COVID-19. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. An update on Yankee pitcher Masahiro Tanaka. The Rangers and Islanders playoff games will be in Toronto.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak is brought to you by Interactive Brokers Mutual Fund Marketplace. Clients from over 200 countries and territories have access to over 21,000 no-load and 8,300 no-transaction fee funds. Learn more at ibkr.com/funds.
U.S. futures are following stocks in Europe and Asia higher, 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up about 37 points. Dow futures up 356. NASDAQ futures up 122. The DAX in Germany's up 1.7%, so is the CAC in Paris. FTSE 100 up 1.9%. Nikkei 225 in Japan gained 1.8%, and the Hang Seng in Hong Kong jumped 3.8%. 10-year Treasury down 5/30 seconds, yield 0.68%. The yield on the 2-year 0.15%. NYMEX crude oil up 0.3% or 12 cents at $40.77 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 1/3% or $6.50 at $17.8350 an ounce. The euro 1.1297 against the dollar. The yen 107.54. Nathan.
Karen, we're coming off the biggest one-day increase in global coronavirus infections. U.S. cases continue to surge with a pace above last week's average. California, Florida, Arizona, and Texas continue to see increases. Lena Hidalgo is chief executive of Harris County, Texas.
At this point, our hospitals here in Harris County, Houston, and 33 other cities, they are crossing into surge capacities.
Hidalgo is calling for more restrictions to limit the spread of the virus, but says the state government has blocked local officials from taking appropriate measures.
In Arizona, Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego blames the surge on an early push to reopen. She spoke to ABC's This Week, heard right here on Bloomberg Radio.
We opened way too early in Arizona. We were one of the last states to go to stay at home and one of the first to reemerge.
Like officials in Houston, the Phoenix mayor says state government is limiting the ability of local officials to impose restrictions.
Our governor has preempted us from closing different types of businesses or moving restaurants to takeout only. We really want as many tools as possible. We had to beg to be able to implement masking orders.
And the surge could put local tourism at risk in states across the South. TripAdvisor CEO Stephen Koffer is seeking travelers shun southern vacations for areas with lower infection rates. He spoke on Face the Nation from CBS, heard Sundays on Bloomberg Radio.
You look at the top searches, and I think 5 or 6 of the top 10 a couple of weeks ago were all wonderful southern beaches, Texas, Arizona, Florida, great places to go, but that switched. Everyone's moving essentially up north, away from all these hotspots.
Cases in northern states have seen infections stabilize. Today, New York City enters phase 3 of its reopening. Phase 3 also begins today in Massachusetts.
Now, despite rising infections, the Trump administration remains bullish on the economy. Labor Secretary Eugene Scalia says the recovery is going better than expected, and more stimulus could further boost growth. He appeared on Fox News Sunday, heard on Bloomberg Radio.
There will be a talk as we get deeper into the month about possible additional measures, but I am optimistic, as I know the president is, about how we're reopening, the success we're having right now, rebuilding that really extraordinary economy that we had through February until the virus came.
Goldman Sachs, however, does not share that sentiment. Economists at the firm are lowering estimates for GDP this quarter. Goldman predicts 25% growth for the third quarter. That's down from 33%.
Coronavirus cases are climbing and GDP forecasts are falling, but stocks are still on the rise. U.S. futures and European equities are gaining after a strong showing in Asia. Bloomberg's Juliet Sally joins us from Singapore with more on the Asian session. Good morning, Juliet.
Good morning, Karen and Nathan. The CSI 300 gained 5.7% on the close, its biggest one-day jump since February last year to hold at June 2015 highs. The Shanghai Composite had its biggest rally in 5 years to hold at February 2018 highs, up by 5.7%. Brokerages led the gains in China, with enthusiasm also sparked by a front-page editorial from the nation's state media that said fostering a healthy bull market after the pandemic is more important to the economy than ever. Hong Kong stocks also joined the rally, set for a bull market, while gains were more muted in Japan and South Korea. In Singapore, Juliet Sali, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Juliet, thanks. European equities are also gaining. The stock 600 is up 1.5%. U.S. futures are higher by 1.2%. And Warren Buffett's getting back in the deal business. Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway is buying all of Dominion Energy's gas pipeline and storage assets. Here with more on the acquisition is Bloomberg's Catherine Chiglinski.
The deal really underscores just how big Berkshire is going to be in the energy sector after this. These operations are really going to spread kind of their hold in the natural gas transmission side of things. And it really underscores how Buffett is willing to now finally pounce. I mean, he took a really cautious approach at his annual meeting in May, warning people that we probably haven't seen the worst case possibilities with this pandemic. So I think this deal and the size of it really underscores that Buffett is actually willing to put some of that money to work.
Berkshire's buying Dominion's assets for $4 billion. It's also assuming more than $5 billion of debt. As a result of the deal, Dominion and Duke Energy are killing plans for a controversial gas pipeline along the East Coast.
Uber also making deals. Sources tell us the ride-hailing company has agreed to acquire Postmates for $2.6 billion. The takeover would help Uber gain ground against DoorDash, the market leader in U.S. food delivery. The acquisition could be announced as soon as today.
Well, we're seeing strong gains for some big names in early trading. Shares of Uber are up 6% after word of that deal. Tesla's higher by 6%. American Airlines, Delta, United, and Boeing all up more than 3%.
Position closed on euro. Profit £200.
Futures on the rise. S&P futures up 38 points. Dow futures up 368. NASDAQ futures up 125 points. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg. And at 6:07 on Wall Street, we bring in Michael Barr for a check of what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. Phase 3 of reopening from the pandemic is scheduled to begin today in New York City. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo urged people in a tweet to wear a mask, social distance, and be smart. Cuomo says, though, indoor dining will remain closed. However, some restaurants are getting more creative and are expanding their outdoor dining. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says there should be a national mask requirement during the virus. Murphy spoke on NBC's Meet the Press.
It's become almost not even debatable. Certainly when you're going out and absolutely indoors. As I mentioned, this virus is a lot more lethal inside than outside. But if you're leaving your house, put on a mask. I think it ought to be a national requirement.
Meet the Press can be heard Sundays on Bloomberg. Broadway star Nick Cordero has lost his long battle to COVID-19. The Tony nominee was just 41. FDA Commissioner Stephen Hahn said it is too early to tell if it is safe to host part of the Republican National Convention next month in Florida, where coronavirus cases have been surging. It originally scheduled to be held in Charlotte, North Carolina, but there were safety concerns. Hahn on CNN State of the Union also commented on President Trump, saying that 99% of coronavirus cases in the U.S. were totally harmless.
I'm not going to get into who's right and who's wrong. What I'm going to say, Dana, is what I've said before, which is that it's a serious problem that we have. We've seen this surge in cases. We must do something to stem the tide, and we have this in our power to do it by following the guidance from the White House Task Force and the CDC.
Critics say the president's comments were misleading. India's coronavirus epidemic became the third biggest in the world behind the U.S. and Brazil. Prosecutors have told a judge that they'd like to schedule a Friday court appearance for Jeffrey Epstein's associate on charges she helped him recruit women to sexually abuse. British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested Thursday. She has been detained without bail after agreeing to be moved to New York. Maxwell has been charged with conspiring to entice girls as young as 14 to engage in illegal sex acts with Epstein from 1994 through 1997. Global news, 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thank you, Michael. 6:09 on Wall Street. Time for the Burden Accountants and Advisors Sports Report. Here's John Stashower.
Nathan, the Yankees were holding their collective breath Saturday when Masahiro Tanaka took that Giancarlo Stanton line drive off his head. But good news yesterday from manager Aaron Boone.
He had concussion-like symptoms originally before leaving for the hospital that have since dissipated. He went through a battery of tests at the hospital. Everything checked out well. They had a CT scan. It's negative.
Tanaka, after being released from the New York Presbyterian Hospital, even showed up yesterday at the stadium, was said to be in good spirits. The Yankees will have an intra-squad game today with Jay Happ on the mound. David Price now a Dodger after his trade from Boston. He's the biggest name player to choose not to play when MLB starts the shortened season in a few weeks. Price walking away from almost $12 million in a 60-game season. He would have made only about 12 starts. Cleveland manager Terry Francona admits it's time for a name change. They have been the Indians since 1915. The Washington Redskins on the verge of changing their name. Their new coach, Ron Rivera, is said to be talking to team owner Dan Snyder about possible new names. The Atlanta Braves say they have no plans to change. Rangers and Islanders now finally know where they are headed for the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Eastern Conference games will be in Toronto. The West games in Edmonton. The NHL and the Players Association have agreed to protocols. 26-year-old American Bryson DeChambeau just put on 40 pounds, saw it pay off with an impressive PGA win at the Rocket Mortgage in Detroit. The long-hitting DeChambeau shot 23 under par and won by 3 shots. Kevin Harvick, with his 4th win of the year, took the Brickyard 400 in Indianapolis. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
All right, John, thanks. Now time for our weekly look at what would have been in sports if not for the pandemic. The Subway Series leads the way. The Mets and Yankees would have played each other tomorrow for the first time this season in the Bronx. After the traditional middle Sunday off, Wimbledon would have resumed today with all 16 men's and women's singles matches in the 4th round. By the way, the next major tournament is the U.S. Open. That's not till August 31st. Futures higher. This is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777.